Number 7. Love for mom. Not all creepy discoveries are made in the ice that covers the globe. One woman made a very disturbing discovery when she purchased a deep freezer at a yard sale. 56-year-old Marcella Jean Lee sold a freezer to her neighbor for a mere $30 before moving from North Carolina. The freezer was taped up, and Lee claimed that it was a time capsule with items inside for a Sunday school project. Lee was adamant in telling her neighbor to not look inside, and that church members would come by to collect the contents within. The neighbor waited for a couple of weeks, but when no one came by to collect anything, she decided to look inside for herself. In the freezer was the corpse of Lee's mother, who died of natural causes. Lee was charged with the felony of failing to report a death. Number 6. A frozen maiden. One of the strangest and scariest discoveries found frozen in ice holds an innocent title, the Maiden. You might actually be thinking this is not so scary, but think again. This Incan mummy is the thing's nightmares are made of. The well-preserved mummy was found alongside 2 young child mummies, 22,000 feet above sea level on the slopes of a volcano. Although it was 1999, nearly 500 years after she died, the maiden still had ice in lines in her hair. All 3 were preserved in the icy mountain, completely ready to raise from the dead. Johann Reinhard, an American archaeologist and member of the expedition that discovered the 3 mummies, said, "The doctors have been shaking their head and saying they sure don't look 500 years old, but as if they died a few weeks ago. And a chill went down my spine the first time I saw her hands, because they look like those of a person who is alive." Number 5. Frozen soldiers. During the First World War, there was a fierce mine warfare between the Italian and Austro-Hungarian forces. This conflict took place in the Dolomites, a mountain range in northeastern Italy. There were many casualties due to the warfare, but some deaths were due to external forces. On Friday, December the 13th, 1916, an avalanche claimed the lives of 10,000 soldiers. The day became known as White Friday, and the remains of soldiers are still being found today as the planet heats up. In 2012, the bodies belonging to 2 teenage soldiers were discovered in ice, perfectly preserved. Both discovered bodies had bullet holes in their skulls. Archaeologists were forced to work fast because these fresh bodies can quickly decompose in the warmth. Number 4. The Survivors. In 1972, a Uruguayan rugby team known as the Old Christians Club boarded a plane en route to Chile. However, the aircraft ended up crashing in the Andes, claiming the lives of more than a quarter of the passengers. Many of the survivors lost their lives due to the treacherous conditions of the Andes. Those who survived had to listen to the daunting news from radio reports that the search for them had been abandoned. Luckily, 2 survivors made a 10-day trek across the mountain range and eventually got in contact with authorities. The other survivors were located and airlifted from the scene of the crash. 26 days after the survivors were rescued, a group of men led by a priest went to the location of the crash to bury the deceased. They made the grisly discovery that the survivors stayed alive by eating the flesh of those who perished in the crash. Number 3. Frozen fox. In southern Sweden, 26-year-old Jeffers Sandstorm decided to embrace the frozen Scandinavian waters and go for a skate out on the Jönköping Lake. However, Sandstorm's leisurely skate became unexpectedly interrupted by a shocking sight. At first, the man thought he'd come across a piece of foam rubber. Upon closer speculation, he realized it was a fox frozen in the lake with only its whiskers piercing through the ice surfaces. Sandstorm believes the fox had fallen through the ice and failed to make it back onto the surface. He admitted to the Daily Mail that he promptly returned home after the discovery. He wanted to make sure he wasn't next. Number 2. Hidden Valley. Something doesn't have to be creepy or gross to be terrifying, you know. And you can bet the glaciologists who found a giant canyon frozen in Greenland thought so. as the enormous valley they discovered back in 2013 was almost twice as long as the Grand Canyon. Makes you wonder how something that big can still be discovered in 2016. Then we have Google Earth for that kind of stuff. Well, the reason this canyon was hard to spot is that it lies frozen under a sheet of ice several kilometers thick. But by using radar images provided by NASA, a team of glaciologists deduced that beneath this ice sheet lies a 750 kilometers long mega canyon over 800 meters deep and 10 kilometers wide, making it the longest canyon discovered on Earth to date. Number 1. Dearest Mummy. On September 19, 1991, 2 German tourists were hiking the Ötztal Alps, a mountain range in the central eastern Alps. The tourists ended up discovering a corpse, which they thought may have belonged to a recently deceased mountaineer. 3 days later, the body was extracted and brought to the office of a medical examiner in Innsbruck, Austria. The corpse was examined by archaeologist Konrad Spindler, who discovered that this uncovered body was far from recent. It was found that the body was about 4,000 years old, which was discovered due to the tools that were found on him. Now known as the Iceman, or Ötzi, this discovery became Europe's oldest known human mummy. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please let me know by clicking the like button.